Whether or not is recorded before a live guinea pig studio audience. Meteorologist Joe Bastardi here. Um, Got to take issue with some things I saw in the Washington Post. Now, this time of the year, spring is sprung, the grass is riz. Let's get down to the weather biz, right? But it's also hurricane hype season. And when you're going to hurricane hype stuff, you've got to blame CO2. Get down with CO2. Yeah, I know you. See, I'm pretty hip for a 63-year-old guy. All right. Um, this as the headline: as oceans rapidly warm because of climate change, an urgent need to improve hurricane forecasts. I agree with part two. This is absolutely. My dad was a research meteorologist. I'm into research, not only hurricanes, but floods, droughts, tornadoes, basically things that have always occurred and are always going to occur. But this part, let's take a look at this. Now, there's several reasons why this is a sort of an interesting comment, and I'm going to show you some of them. There is so much more to hurricanes than just, hey, the water's warm, right? Now, there's no question a hurricane that comes in to an area where there's very warm water is going to try to become more enhanced if the conditions are right. We're going to use Florence, which, 5 days before I heard people say, we should have a category 6. This is going to be so bad, right? Okay. Why did Florence weaken? I'm going to show you how much more that there is to all of this. All right. Okay. So oceans rapidly warm out. Are the oceans rapidly warming? All right. Well, this is the sea surface temperatures over the last 3 years. They are above normal off the eastern seaboard, off Mexico, but most of the ocean is no warmer. Does that look warmer to you? Right? Does that look like there's rapid warming taking place? Okay, let's go to part two. Surface temperatures. Now, the last 3 years, they've looked like this. All right, last 4 years. So it's been warmer than normal, 2/10 of it is C, but notice the tropics are not warming up, right? Now, at 500 millibars, now we're starting to talk about interesting things because the theory is there are going to be these big ridges that are going to trap these storms, and storms are going to blow up and be massive storms, right? Well, 500 millibars, most of the positives are up here in northwest North America into the western part of the United States. There is some in the North Atlantic, and that is associated with the warmer water in there. But the problem is, and I'm going to show you this in just a second, warm over cool is not a real good setup for hurricanes. You want the water to be warmer in the tropics and cooler to the north because that causes heat incubation. But let's just move on here. This is the Japanese Meteorological Agency model a week before Hurricane Michael, and we said that on September 16th we said we think there's going to be a big Gulf hurricane, right, in October. And when this came out, I was like, holy smokes, we actually forecasted this to become a major hurricane from when it was just a tropical storm in the Caribbean. But this is the Madden-Julian oscillation and vertical velocity. It's very, very important to look at these things. It's not just the oceans, okay? If we go up and look at 400 millibars, and this is where I really start getting antsy with folks that are just blaming the warming of the oceans and blaming CO2. How come it's drying out over the tropics? And okay, if you're on the other side of the issue, can you please explain why we have the warm, moist, trapping hotspots that we're supposed to develop? How come it's the opposite over the tropics, right? There's net sinking going on over the tropics right now. And that has been keeping the ACE index at bay. And why is that? Because most of the warming of the oceans relative to averages is occurring further north. In fact, the Atlantic is getting ready to go into its cooler cycle, but that's another story for another time. All right, well, this was a Japanese model 2 weeks before Michael, so it was hinting at it. This was the week of Florence. Florence at this time was a monster hurricane out here, right? But the model said it was going to come into an area of weakening. How about that? So, and let's remember what was going on. You see me babbling incoherently here because I'm getting excited. The water was boiling warm off the eastern seaboard. But what does that do? That naturally lowers the pressures to the north and northwest of the hurricane, more so than if there was the kind of situation where it was nice and cool across New England, for instance. Like if you look at the 1954 season in New England, all right, it was cool before Hurricane Carol, right? When you have the buildup of high pressure over the northeast part of the United States and the Northwest Atlantic, the temperatures aren't all that warm, but what generally happens is it allows the convergence you need to the south. So when you take that away, when you lower pressures to the north, here comes this hurricane. It's a tight fist and it's coming up. It starts releasing itself. And you saw that with Florence. It expanded and the center weakened as it came to the coast. Remember, it hit as a 952, 953, category 2 falling to 1. So it was spreading out, right? It was coming into an area less conducive for development. Now, when we look at Michael, when we get back and look at Michael, comparatively speaking, first of all, again, I want to show you that specific humidity. Michael was later in the season. There was cooler air that was entrenched, and because of that, Michael was just perfect for convergence. And you saw that on the Japanese model, hinting at that so far away. Again, when we look at what it was forecasting for Florence, it was forecasting, so that's sinking air it's forecasting overall, okay, relative to the air around it. So we very definitely had an indication that things were different as Florence was coming to the coast, just as we had the indication that Michael, from 3 weeks away, the model was saying to me, look out, here it comes, okay? Now, and you say, well, wait a minute. Well, look, I was on Sean Hannity's show on September 16th saying, I'll see you in 2 or 3 weeks. We're going to have a Gulf hurricane, right? It wasn't just me being flippant. It was just, look at the pattern. So these things are so important. Now, years when there's big hits, 1950s, right? The pressures are lower in the Caribbean. See how they're low down in the Caribbean over here, right? See the lower pressure in here and neutral pressures up to the north over here, right? Now, what about what's happened in these years with the lack of hits? Aha! Look at the pressures lower up over North America, right? You can see that. Let me just get my painter back on here. So the pressures are lower in North America. That causes the convergence of the storm to be less as it approaches the coast. Irene, take Irene, all right? Irene, good night, Irene. Sorry about that. But take Irene. She weakened coming to the coast. The 1821 hurricane didn't do that. It was a category 3 all the way to JFK. Irene was a tropical storm once it made its final landfall around JFK. So there's examples of this. So, it's very, very interesting because you got to wonder when you see an article like that. I'm not saying that it has no value, but I look at it and I say, okay, do you guys even bother looking at, what's your forecast? Are we going back to the 1940s where there were railroad tracks of major hurricanes hitting Florida? Is that the implication? Well, why did that happen before? How come it hasn't happened since? I'm talking about 9 or 10 storms hitting Florida in the 1940s, and there's two hitting Texas and a major hurricane up the eastern seaboard during the 1940s. Well, look at the 1950s. It's like a railroad track up the eastern seaboard. So look, again, all for research. NOAA is the safety net against nature, okay? It's when folks start saying and giving reasons to say, well, nature's being changed by man, and make it sound like it's definite, when you just saw me. I wasted 10 minutes of your time showing you various examples of why you can't just say that, and it may actually be going the opposite way, that the distorted warming, more warming to the north than down to the south, could be a limiting factor for tropical cyclones. Every season, almost every season, there's going to be one storm that's going to try to become a major hurricane, even in the lack of seasons. And what's dangerous about a season like this with this El Nino and the way the Atlantic is that these things can develop in close. And practically nothing in the tropics, but they get in someone's backyard and they can blow up. No question about that. But Alicia did that. You look at Hurricane Bob, what Hurricane Bob did, right? In 1991. Belle blew up, comparatively speaking, in the backyard just north of the Bahamas and was a Category 3 hurricane when it went by Hatteras, but weakened coming into New England. So every year you can see something like that. But as far as saying sea surface temperatures are rapidly increasing, I just showed you. Does that look like they're rapidly increasing to you? Right? And that it's because of climate change? Hey, the climate's always been changing. All right, that's it for now. Enjoy the weather. It's the only weather you got.